Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Monique Renee and today I am bringing you another YouTube artist collective piece. So in this video I really wanted to take some time and walk you guys through my process creating this piece. I want to take you through how I came up with the concept and how I executed the final product. This piece is a mixed media on a wood panel. I used both watercolor and acrylics and some other miscellaneous supplies, and I had a lot of fun creating it, so I hope you guys will have a lot of fun watching me make it. So, like I mentioned, this is part of the YouTube Artist Collective, and part of the collective is that every 2 or so months we all follow a prompt, and then we make a piece of art following that prompt. The prompt for this go was phobia. And to be honest, I actually struggled a lot with coming up with a concept. I'll show you a clip of my sketchbook where I was kind of figuring some stuff out, but what I ended up doing was researching the difference between a phobia and a fear, and then trying to come up with something kind of around that, because I discovered that a fear is just something that you're afraid of, and a phobia is something that actually impacts your life. Kind of going off that same idea, I didn't really want to draw something that a lot of people are afraid of, because I thought of doing like arachnophobia, which is fear of spiders, and drawing like a creepy spider lady. But then I thought, you know, a lot of people are afraid of spiders, but I wanted to do something a little bit more personal to me and something that was a little bit different. The concept I ended up going with was the concept of a girl looking outside her window, and outside her window is the endless void of space. And I guess you guys can probably guess by now, but I am terrified of the endless void of space, or really any kind of wide open, endless area. I will get back to why exactly the endless void of space terrifies me in just a moment, but first I would like to talk about my process for a little bit. So you guys saw me sketching in the beginning of this video. And that was basically me just getting my idea down on paper and kind of figuring out the composition and where I wanted to place everything. From there, I transferred the sketch over to my wood panel and I sketched the whole thing out again in a red colored pencil. I like using a red colored pencil because once I add color, the marks usually go away, and they go away a lot easier than like graphite. Plus, if I use a graphite pencil, it usually smudges really badly, so I really don't like using graphite on the final product. From there, I went in with my Schmincke watercolors, which are my favorite watercolors, and this is where my process becomes a little different than normal. I have recently absolutely fallen in love with painting on wood panels. I think it's so much fun, and it really causes me to think of things in a different way. And one of the examples in that is that when I put the watercolor down on the panel, it feels almost less like I'm painting and more like I'm staining the wood, if that makes sense. And the wood definitely doesn't act like paper does at all. The wood kind of really absorbs the watercolor almost instantly. And I find that if I use a lot of water with my watercolors, it really seeps into the wood and kind of spreads out a lot more. There can be some instances where that's a good thing and the effect is really, really cool, but for this piece, I kind of wanted to keep that to a minimum, so I ended up using a lot less water than I usually would with this piece. And you can see in some areas where I added a bit more water than I should have, and it just really bleeds into the crevices of the wood, but I don't mind because I think it adds to the overall piece. I think it adds to the unpredictability of the whole thing, and I really enjoy it. From there, I pretty much watercolored as normal, my usual process with watercolor, which you can see elsewhere on my channel if you would like more information on how I watercolor. just keeping in mind about trying not to use too much water and keeping the colors really neutral, because I like when the wood texture stands out, so I didn't want the colors to be too contrasting. All right, now let's talk about our biggest fears. So while I was perusing through the internet, I was looking up the things that I was afraid of or that I thought I had a phobia of to kind of get more information on them. And while perusing, I discovered that one of my biggest fears that I've always had is the fear of, I guess, infinite spaces, if that makes sense, or the fear of like something that is endless. So examples of this would be like outer space, how like outer space is endless and it goes on for infinity and there's no end to it. It gives me actually really bad anxiety if I think about it too hard. And it gets to the point where I cannot watch movies, like certain movies about it. Like Interstellar was one where I saw it and I had to close my eyes through part of it because I started getting almost like an anxiety attack. So I discovered that there's actually a name for this, which is, I'm gonna butcher it, but I believe it's pronounced apeirophobia. And basically it means the phobia, the fear of like infinity. So I thought that was really interesting, and I didn't realize that there was like a name for something that I was afraid of, because I always thought it was just this like weird thing that I was scared of, but apparently it's more common than I thought. I don't have it like really bad. Like I'm not even sure if I would call it a phobia because it doesn't quite affect like my everyday life. It is something that I'm afraid of and something that I try to avoid thinking about or exposing myself to, but it doesn't negatively impact my life like on a daily basis. But that brings me to my concept. I wanted to paint something that for most people would not be scary. For most people looking at this who don't have a fear of infinite spaces, they might think this is like a whimsical painting or even something like cool, something interesting. And I wanted to paint this because I wanted to show people that people have different phobias and different fears of different things. And even though something may not seem like a big deal to one person, to another person, it could be almost debilitating and really scary. So I kind of wanted to, I guess, make like a PSA without sounding too preachy, but just be like, I don't know, just kind of try to be more understanding of people and their fears, because I've had a lot of people kind of like make fun of me, I guess, about being afraid of like space, which, I mean, it's not like a common thing to be scared of, so I guess I can kind of understand, but what I really wanted to say was just because something may not be scary to you, or you may not understand why someone is afraid of a certain thing, does not make their fear any less real to them or any less valid, and I just think the whole world would be better if we could be more understanding of people and their fears, and realize that it's not always a conscious decision of someone being afraid of something. Sometimes they just are, and their brain, whenever they're confronted with this certain thing, for example me with outer space, sometimes their brain goes, oh my god, you're gonna die, and this is horrible, and this is the thing you should be scared of, and you need to abort, and you need to get out of here. And they have no control over that, because I know that's definitely what my brain does. Like when I saw Interstellar, and I was like, oh no, I'm going to die just by watching this. So that's kind of the feeling that I wanted to get across in this painting. So yeah, that was like my thought process behind it, at least. And now, of course, I want to pick all of your brains. I want to know what you are scared of. And I know it's hard to like talk about your biggest fears, but I want to know, is there anything quote unquote silly that you guys are scared of? Or maybe something out of the ordinary that's not quite like spiders or heights or something like that? I would be very interested to know. You guys all know that I'm scared of space, but I'm also scared of like the ocean, especially like those parts of the ocean where like it's so deep that you can't really see the end, like you don't know where the end is. That is absolutely terrifying to me, just like not knowing like where the ocean ends, I guess, and just like the thought of being in like this endless void of ocean and just like, ugh, it gives me hella anxiety. So yeah, those are some not quite normal things, I guess, that I'm afraid of, and I would like to know what you all are afraid of. Alright, so now back to talking about the painting itself. So what I'm doing here is I'm laying down like a base coat, because what I'm going to do now is paint the galaxy in acrylic paint. I wanted to use two different types of paint to really cement the idea that these are like two separate worlds almost, so I didn't want them to look the same. So in order to do that, I wanted to lay down a base coat of white acrylic paint so that when I put the galaxy colors over it, they're more unified and you can't really see any of that wood texture coming through. And from there, I actually started to paint the galaxy part. I used a mixture of different blues, purples, black, and white. And from here, it was really just kind of intuitive. I just started slapping down some colors onto the wood panel and keeping in mind that I wanted to keep some parts of the galaxy really bright and some parts really dark. So I went in first with some black and blue to kind of define the darker parts of the galaxy that I wanted, and then I go in with the blue and the white to kind of define more of the lighter parts. And from there, it was just a lot of going back and forth with different colors and different values. I didn't quite blend them out too much. Like, blending was not something I was super worried about because I kind of liked the choppy look. And I also liked having some of the acrylic paint texture on the canvas as well. Like, I like when you look at it from below, you can kind of see like the paint and the ridges of the paint. I think that goes a lot longer in kind of making it look like different worlds like I was talking about earlier. So I kind of kept the whole thing really rough and really just kind of intuitive, I guess. I'm definitely still new when it comes to acrylic painting, so I definitely think this part could have come out a lot better. I am happy with it, but I just am not quite sure how best to paint with acrylics. So the main struggle I had was the paint is really thick, and I'm not sure if I should be using more water to try to thin it out a little bit, just because it's hard to get like those details when the paint is so thick and kind of goopy. Like especially around the edges where I really wanted some clean lines, it was really difficult for me to get into those like crevices and stuff. So I'm not sure if I need to use more water or if there's like a thinning agent I need, or if maybe it's my paintbrushes. There's still a lot to learn when it comes to acrylics, so I'm definitely doing my best, and I really love the process of painting with acrylics, so I definitely want to get a lot better, so I'm going to be practicing acrylics a lot more on my channel. Alright, so this next part was a lot of fun. I wanted to add stars to my galaxy, but whenever I do them with a regular paintbrush, they just look too uniform and they don't quite look right. So I took a large flat brush that I had, dipped it in some white acrylic paint, and then I flicked it with my finger all over my painting, and it made a huge mess, and it was awesome. I did make sure to lay down some paper towels and stuff where I didn't want the stars to go, and it turned out really cool. There's definitely a few stars that turned out like big. I'm sure you guys can see them, but I still really like it, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then from there, I went in and I added some white to the curtains because I wanted the curtains to be almost sheer, and unfortunately my camera died before I could record the last bit of the curtains. But what I did was I defined the highlights with some white acrylic paint, and then I defined some shadows with some dark purple watercolor paint. And then once I was done with all of that, I went over again with some dark blue and purple watercolor paint, where the edges of the window would be. So the window would like go underneath the curtains in certain parts. So I would just paint over really lightly and with a lot of water this time where those edges of the window would be. And because I had that acrylic paint, the watercolor wouldn't soak into the wood where the acrylic paint was. So I could still keep those white highlights and still have those darker edges where the window would be. I know it's kind of hard. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right without seeing like visual for it, but you can see in the end product where I have like those edges, and yeah, that was really cool. And I wish I got it on camera, but my dumb camera died, so I'm very sorry. But that was also like a last minute decision, and I wasn't sure if it was going to turn out good, but it did, and I was very happy. And then all that was left to do was to define some edges of my watercolor portion of the painting with some colored pencil. I like doing this just because it gets those edges really crisp, which is hard to do with watercolor on wood, and then I was done with the painting. I hope you guys enjoyed watching me paint this and hearing me talk about my deepest fears. This painting is for sale, and honestly, I really hope someone buys this painting because I don't like to look at it, as funny as that sounds. Like, yeah, if anyone wants to buy this original painting, it's definitely for sale. Anyway, thank you guys for hanging out with me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought, and let me know what you're afraid of, because I would love to hear. Anyway, that's going to be it from me, so I love you guys. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, guys.